DC strikes back, desperate for a clean slate and hiring James Gunn for creative overseeing the Neo-age of the DCEU. Here comes that new Superman movie. Is it as good as it needs to be? Well, that's kinda complicated. There's been over a dozen iterations of the iconic hero since the 40s and 30s, and I'll say it's been a couple decades since we've had a version resembling anything like the humble, cool hero from the comics, since infamously, Zack Snyder doesn't understand how to write these characters with, like, any humanity.
You eat all my beans, nigga!
Look at this emotionless god. He's a stone cold killer. So honestly, you'd be forgiven for thinking Superman is boring by this point. Pretty much everyone has their favorite iterations of this story, and me personally, I believe that none of them have really seen the big screen yet. But from seeing the first announcements and where the writers were taking creative inspiration from, then the trailers leading up to this, it had me all quite intrigued with the presentation. I was looking forward to experiencing a new world with all its wacky happenings and seeing a more grounded human Superman and distinct Clark Kent that clearly takes inspiration from Christopher Reeve as well as All-Star Superman, which is where I'm happy to say the presentation is really where this film gets things right. 100%, this is the closest you've ever been to Superman being in his shoes for a few days, and in that perspective, James Gunn is able to juggle dozens of characters distinctively and intently in a way that covers not just their depth, but their purpose so well, and you really understand why Superman acts the way that he does, and I think none of that would have worked nearly as well if not for the casting. David Corenswet fit in the role so well, at times he still felt like a young new Superman who's still figuring it out. Like, he's funny and charming, but to me, he isn't quite yet the calm and commanding type. However, I think that's something he could grow into more with time, given he's been at this for only 3 years, and for here, it definitely works for the film. His Clark Kent was also great, but is honestly something I wish we got a little bit more of, and the connection with Lois Lane, played by Rachel Brosnahan, was really sweet, and I think their chemistry was really apparent, and her performance clicked with me for that character. However, the standout performance was without a doubt Nicholas Hoult as Lex Luthor. The extent of which this man will go to blatantly hate Superman to his core and make every aspect of his life an absolute nightmare is diabolical. I just think his performance was really fitting, and the looks he's giving Superman at times is that of somebody who despises an insect and has a delusion that they are somehow better than them in every way. Additionally, the performances from all the side characters were all excellent as well, except for Lex's nanotech assistant, who almost stumbled into overacting a couple times, but honestly, with this many characters, they all managed to somehow be memorable and have the potential to be somebody's favorite. Particularly Eddie Gathegi's Mr. Terrific was a real standout and gets a fun James Gunn sequence that was really well implemented. Furthermore, I'll say visually watching this one was like eating an ice cream sundae. Nearly every shot was an incredible, colorful, vibrant balance of art with really well done lighting. Some of the camera work was a little bit much for me if I'm being real, and normally I prefer not to see a movie in 3D if I can, but for this being a 3D showing, I'd say it worked pretty well for some of the visual effects in here. I know some people were worried about this particular shot of Superman, and yes, funny enough, it is in the film, but I was kind of able to overlook it, and there's nothing really else like it. Also, I think the inclusion of Crypto was handled really well for the most part, and I think it's fun to see a superhero with a dog that just doesn't listen to him. There's also a couple good moments of comedy, a couple strange laughs, but more often than not, I found the humor kind of excessive and conflicted with the emotion. As for some of the other writing, oh man, I think this one would have benefited from having a lot of fat trimmed off and a lot more heart added in. And I say that as somebody who got teary-eyed at one part, because this one honestly is just a hot mess. From the start, I was kind of in shock of what I was watching. I went to the Thursday night preview, and for some reason, they had it blaring so deafeningly loud to the point where the peak volume wasn't even clear. It was just straight distortion, so you got half the people in there with their ears freaking plugged, and if that's the case, you can't even focus on what's going on what these characters are saying to each other, and what's happening in any of the fights without being disoriented from all the noise like you're getting punched in the ear. Plus, you're getting like vertigo from certain action scenes that have shots that are spinning and speeding around flying characters all the time. Then when the title came up, I was just kind of like, is this it? Is this a Superman movie? It kind of made me feel like a tacky comic book fan in Hall H with how like on the nose it was. On top of that, I was feeling a little bit lost being thrown into an already established universe with relationships settled and superhumans accepted, being as that we haven't yet met these people. But luckily, after about 30 minutes or so, we kind of start to pull back and we do gain some perspective. Like, you get to see how Metropolis and all its citizens react to otherworldly happenings, and I was able to better understand all of the characters and the depth of the conflict and grasp the believability. However, without any origin story, and by opening by not showing what's led up to the start of the movie, by kind of just jumping in to tackle a few days of his life, it almost hinders this movie of its theatrics and kind of makes it come off as more of a disorganized collection of episodes of the zany Superman conflicts, with big creative swings and cosmic ideas that I was quite fascinated by, but couldn't help feel was a distraction from the lack of any emotional story. Pair that with this film opting to cap most emotional scenes with a cheap bit of comedy rather than landing the heart, and this one becomes all the more frustrating, given it's close to excellence, but it's at the cost of its own desire to be mainstream and as entertaining as possible, since more often than not we'll have a frickin' kaiju battle or explore a needless subplot that would take the place of having a potentially emotional scene with real depth or something setting up the world like some more Clark Kent scenes, but instead they add in excessive fight scenes, blaring sounds, and dizzying flight photography. Yeah, maybe don't bring grandma to this one.
What is happening?
But at the same time, I really respect and implore James Gunn for taking such bold creative swings and making something as entertaining and interesting as this, cause say what you will about the film, most everyone in my audience was intrigued by the ideas, and I only wish they'd gone further with the themes and cut some dumb quips and needless fights off so they could have better served the emotion, because this one needed to be good. Oddly enough though, I've come to only reflect on this film's energy, the characters, and the otherworldly adventure more and more with time. I had fun with it. It was kind of a lot. It did give me whiplash and my ears were ringing, so maybe it would have been better to enjoy on my TV in this instance. But I do think it's worth checking out at some point. It's undeniable that James Gunn made yet another colorful, family fun-oriented comic movie that knows how weird and goofy it is and just embraces it. But clearly, it's desperate to say a lot, and by coming short and holding back to fully flesh out any of what it wants to say, you are left a little bit hungry. I'm happy about the Saturday morning cartoon elements of the movie, and I know I'll enjoy it more on a rewatch when I can accept it having little lesser expectations. But for now, I'm giving Pooperman a 7 out of 10, but I'm still down to see where the DCEU goes next, and hopefully Fantastic Four won't be as deafening. Also, before I go, I'll just quickly mention I did see Jurassic World Rebirth last weekend while I was in California town. I got to see it at a drive-in movie, which was one of the coolest experiences I've ever had. I hope to talk about that at some point.
What did I miss? Who died?
But as for that movie, maybe I'll talk about it in a summer catch-up or at the end of the year catch-up. But for now, all I'll say is that maybe you can wait till streaming for that one. Comment below your thoughts if you've seen Superman or what you thought of my video, like if you have enjoyed, and subscribe if you feel like it. It helps me a lot more than you'll ever know. But thanks very much for watching. I appreciate you sticking around to the end of the video. Please let me know what you thought. Hopefully you liked it as much as I did, and if not, thanks again for watching my videos. Remember to wear your seatbelt, wash your hands, and stay black. See you in the next one. Alright.